How many of us have ever felt like we've been looking for answers and we couldn't find them? We've been on that road before, haven't we? We've been on there. You know, we've gone down this direction, that direction, and it just never seemed to find what we were looking for. We kind of stumbled through this or that, or we were looking for something. We knew it was there, but we just couldn't seem to nail down the exact spot that it needed to be. This road today that we're going to look at that must be traveled, we see the words of Jesus here, and it is so profound once we begin to see the messaging that he's got about where it is that he's going and where it will take us if we will follow him. And I really believe this is profound. I hope and pray that it will challenge you the way that it has me. So we find ourselves looking in this verse from chapter 16 of Matthew in verse 21. We find the disciples in another learning moment. In other words, they're still talking to Jesus. Remember last week they were having the conversation and Peter said to him, "You are the Christ, you are the Son of God." And so there was a confirmation about the clarity about who Jesus is. So now they're going on and they're continuing to talk. And I love how this verse starts. It says here, from then on. From then on, we read. In other words, what they're saying here is after the conversation that we talked about last week, now that it's been clearly established who Jesus is, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. So from then on, in other words, okay, now that we've got that settled, now that that's been clarified, now that you know, now that that's out, now that that's very, very clear, there's something else you need to know. There's something else that needs to be revealed to you. There is a road. This is what Jesus is saying to them. There is a road that I must travel. I have to go down this road. And so will you if you follow me. He's wanting them to understand that where we're getting ready to go is not necessarily going to be easy. It's not going to be that primrose path that's, no potholes and everything's great. It's going to be kind of a tough ride, guys. But if indeed you understand that I am Messiah, if indeed that you understand that I am the Son of the living God and you're following me, we as a key word will get through this. So we see from then on, this was what he was teaching them. From then on, now that we've clearly established who Jesus is, now we can get on to the next part. Well, that makes sense, right? That's where we have to establish that first and foremost. Who is he, just like I said last week, to me? And once we establish that, once that is clear, now we can get busy. Now we can get to work because we don't have to argue over that anymore or contemplate or figure or anything. And now we know. And once we know, then we can get busy. He told them it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem. Understanding who he is demands a new road. Why? Because it changes our destination. Once we understand who he is, it changes our trajectory. It changes the roads that we travel. It changes our attitudes. It changes everything because now I'm not just traveling down a road just for me. Now I'm actually looking for answers that lead me to him. And that's where this is so important. He said, it's necessary that I travel down this road. Oftentimes in life, some of the most important information, some of the most life-changing information comes in the form of difficult lessons. How many of us agree with that today? We don't like that. We don't like that at all because it causes some difficulties. The difficult lessons, the reality of truth is sometimes very hard to hear. Why? Because it requires change. And we resist that almost instantly, right? As soon, oh man, I got to do something different. We tend to just rebel against that almost in a natural way, that requiring of a change, whether it's a change of mind or even greater if it's a change of heart. We don't like that because what happens over the course of time? We fully begin to embrace, well, it's always been that way. And if anything begins to challenge that, then obviously that can't be right. That's got to be bad. That's got to be wrong. But what happens is we get blinded to the possibility of the improvement or the fact that the change might be necessary. Sometimes it needs to change. Aren't we glad the weather changes and it doesn't stay the same way all the time? We like some things that we change are good, I remember growing up with cars without air conditioning. I like the change that they have them now. There's a lot of changes that are good. But my dad used to say, we do have air, 260, 2 windows down and 60 miles an hour. But that's a whole, but when we think about what God is saying here, if coming to Christ does not change us within our heart, there's something missing. So change is a good thing. We resist it, we rebel against it, we strike against it, all these different things, but we have to understand, why is it necessary? Jesus said, it is necessary that I go to Jerusalem. We see here he's telling them this extremely difficult lesson to hear. It is hard to hear. It is a difficult lesson, and it is hard to hear. And he says it is necessary. What is he talking about here? It has to happen. It has to happen in order to complete the mission that he is on. The word necessary, again, it just means it has to be. Nothing else can take this place. Nothing else can change this. This has to happen. It's kind of like, if you're making something, you're making blueberry pie, you got to have blueberries, right? It has to be a component in there. Jesus says, I have to go to Jerusalem. It is necessary. It has to happen. This is going to take place. And so, what is the mindset here? He says, it is necessary for me to go to Jerusalem. They had to be thinking, but wait a minute, they don't like you there. That's not going to go over well. What's going on with that? He said it was necessary for him to go, and then hold on. He said it's necessary for me to go and suffer. Think about that word for a minute. That word means to experience or to be subjected to something bad or unpleasant. He said this was necessary. We have to capture in our mind, imagine, if you will, the faces, the attitudes, the demeanors of those that are hearing this. They're thinking, wait a minute. This is necessary for you to go to a place where they don't want you there and they don't like you, and then you're going to suffer? That word, obviously, we know exactly what that means. You said it's necessary for you to go and suffer many things. He didn't just say one thing. He said many things, from the chief priests, the elders, the scribes. And okay, that sounds bad, right? And then he's going to add a little bit more to it. He says, and be killed. Do we think that the conversation from the listening point probably stopped there? It did. But see, Jesus didn't stop there. That's the part. See, we always miss the most important part. Here he says, and be killed and raised on the third day. So the devastation from hearing this difficult news to hear, we have to understand, again, thinking about just getting in the illustrated parts of our minds, their faces, their attitudes, their demeanors of those that are hearing this. Which part didn't they hear? The raised on the third day part. They didn't hear that part. Not at all. That was the most important words. That was the most important part of everything that he said, and be raised on the third day. They missed that completely. All they heard was suffer. That was the very first thing that came to suffer. And then, like booming thunder coming out of the sky, they heard, be killed. Wait a minute. This can't be. You're our guy. We finally just figured out who you are. You're the Messiah. You're the very one we've been waiting on. We can't have this. We're not going to allow this. We won't have it. Sometimes the things that we don't want to hear are what we need to hear. We see here that it tells us that Peter, he took Jesus aside, and the scripture says, rebuked him. Now, we hear that word, we instantly think, okay, that's probably not good. The word rebuke, it means to express sharp disapproval or criticism to someone's actions. In other words, Peter told Jesus, no. Not going to happen. Not going to allow it. Absolutely not. I'm just going to get in the way of this. You can't do this. I'm not going to have it. He didn't want to hear it. Why? Because it was difficult to embrace the truth. We don't like to hear stuff that's contrary to what we want. None of us do. That's not a character flaw, that's being human. We all wrestle with that, right? Because we kind of have an idea in our mind of what we want to hear. We've already kind of written the script, and then something sometimes goes against it. And we don't like that. It begins to challenge us emotionally, physically, in all other kind of ways. But what we have to understand is while Peter might not have wanted to hear this difficult to embrace truth, here's what we have to understand. If indeed, as he proclaimed and as we have come to understand that Jesus is Messiah, then that means that he came to save the world. Okay? And if indeed he came to save the world, the penalty of sin, it is clearly said in the book of Romans, is what? Death. Who's going to pay that? It was a debt we had no ability to pay. I mean, it would be like if one of us in this room today was asked to write a check for the $34 trillion that we're in debt in this nation. It would be impossible. We couldn't do it. If all of us pooled our resources together, we couldn't do it. And if you can, see me after service. But no, but seriously, I mean, it would be impossible. Okay, from every kind of way. When we see the enormity of the sin debt that has been placed on humanity because of, just doing it our way and just telling God no, we realize only God could fix that. And that's where Jesus steps in. He's the only one. There was only one who was qualified, only one who was capable of paying it in full with no balance. And so Peter said, "Oh no, Lord." I mean, we read here, he says, "Oh no, Lord, this will never happen to you." Now, the beauty of understanding the way that's written, he says, "Oh no, Lord." He's still recognizing who he is, but he's not realizing what he came to do. How often do we do that? Well, "Oh Lord, help me this and that." But we always stick the but in there. But there is no but with God. We get in the way of that. And that's what Peter here is doing. Peter is a hindrance. He's getting in the way, and Jesus calls him on the rug to that. Because sometimes when we recognize who he is, we forget what he came to do. And when we forget what he came to do, we don't allow him to do it. "Lord, help me, but I'm going to go take care of it." Well, then you're not allowing him to help. And we're all guilty of that. We all get in the way of that. And so Peter here is saying, no. This will never happen to you. This is not going to happen. In other words, I'm going to stop it. But Jesus said to him, "Peter, get behind me, Satan." Now, what is he speaking of here? Is Peter now the devil? No. But the desire to stop the work needed for the salvation of humanity is exactly what the enemy wants more than anything. He wanted to stop that more than anything because he knew that was his end. He knew that he would be completely defeated if that ever took place. And he knew that it was going to, but he was going to try everything he could do to stop it, even if it meant using one of the Lord's own. Think about that for a minute. Do we get in the way of his work sometimes because we want it our way? "Well, I don't want this to happen or that to happen." And sometimes we hold our breath and stomp our feet and, have a tantrum. We all do it. Here Peter is thinking he's right because he's thinking, I'm going to be the stand-up guy here. I'm going to be the hero of this story. I'm not going to allow this to happen. And Jesus is telling him just the opposite. You get out of the way so that the mission can be completed, because we can't stop what we've come to do. This has to happen if people have any chance at all. So Jesus continued talking to him, and he said, "You are a hindrance to me." In other words, your attitude is blinding you to the greater good. How often can that happen in our life? I can't, what's the old sayings that we have? You can't see the forest for the trees and all the other things. We have all these sayings, all these cliches in life. But sometimes it's oftentimes that we get in our own way because, well, wait a minute, this is contrary to what I want. But what is the greater good? And sometimes it's not about me. If this will advance things, if this will move things out of the way, then sometimes what's got to move out of the way is me. You know, there's a phrase in certain businesses and certain forms of entertainment or whatever and storytelling that says it's best for business. What is best for business? Well, sometimes it's not you. And that's hard to hear. We don't like that. And it's not that we don't count. Don't get me wrong. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It's not that at all. But it's sometimes that my ways aren't the best. God's ways are always the best, right? And when we're understanding what Jesus is trying to tell Peter here, he's not fussing at him and telling him you're awful and you're terrible. No, he's saying, listen, man, you're getting in the way because you're not seeing the big picture here. Your attitude is blinding you. You're not thinking about God's concerns. Because what is God's desire? None should perish. Jesus came to pay the penalty. Jesus came to be exactly who he was called to be. Messiah, the Savior, the one that could do it all. He came, and Peter here is saying, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Because that's not what I want. That's not what we want. You know, we've gathered this concern together. He says, you're not thinking about God's concerns, which is that none should perish, but rather you are thinking of human concerns, what affects you directly. Isn't that usually where our attention goes to? How is this going to affect me? How does this make me feel? And again, it's not that none of those things don't count, but when we get into I won't allow, but get in our way all the time. All the time. We all get hindered by this because it doesn't allow us to see the bigger picture. And here what we're finding is a very difficult lesson to hear. Very difficult lesson to hear. Because it's hard to imagine because it puts both of those issues, the I and the but, it puts them on the sideline. You know, in other words, it's over here. It's secondary now. And it demands that our attention be placed on the mission. It be placed on the heart of God, that none should perish. See, friends, the gift of salvation is for all who will accept it. The gift of salvation that God has come and so graciously given us and so blessed us with in this enormity of what Jesus came to do. We sing the old hymn, Jesus paid it all. Beautiful words. And all to him we owe. But do we grasp the enormity of the price that he paid? And this is what this is the road that must be traveled. This is where he's trying to get the attention of the disciples' mindset and everyone today that will still listen, is think about what we're doing here. Think about the road that we're on. Think about the mission that we're on. What is that? And that mission still is alive right now, to share the gospel with everybody that we encounter, whether they come through our door, whether they're our neighbor, whether they're in the store, wherever. We can share the gospel. And as I said the other week, even if you have to use words, but, you know, let it be you. Let it be you. Let people see Jesus in you. It is so important, and it's so possible. It is so capable. We have the tools that we need. And this is what Jesus is trying to get Peter to see, and the other disciples that are listening is, because we can only think when Jesus told Peter, get behind me, Satan, the other guy said, ooh, what did he just tell him? We can only imagine the conversation. But what we got to see here, though, is he was trying not only to get his attention, obviously, but he was trying to point him, get back on track. You're not focused. Get back on the mission. We've got something that we have to do. The gift of salvation, again, we see the enormity of this. But Jesus said it was necessary. That's a key word for him to go and to suffer and be killed. But then he concluded with these words, and what he was saying with that word and how that's written is, wait a minute, there's just a little bit more. There's a little bit more to this story. It's not over with right there. And be raised. Why is that important the way that's written? Because that's future tense. That means there's something else to come. More to come after the suffering, after the killing. On the third day, I'll be back. Man, think about that. Oh, that's just exciting when we begin to realize he's saying, yeah, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, but it ain't over. Excuse my bad English. But that's what he's saying. It's not over. It does not end at the grave. That's exciting for every believer today. We've got more to come. Yes, life sometimes can feel like you're suffering. Sometimes it feels like it's killing you. Okay? Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do lose our lives. You know, that's real. It's not to be morbid, that's true. But he's saying, but there's more. There's something more. And as Jesus conquered, as we'll get to the end of this series and at the end of the month, we'll talk about, he conquered death. He conquered hell. He conquered the grave. He's saying, and so can you, if you follow me. This is where it comes. This is so, so powerful, friends. I just love this. Because what does this point us back to? When he says that he must suffer, he must be killed, and on the third day raised. What does this drive us back to? It drives us back to their conversation they were having. And it says in verse 18, and I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower. What he's saying in this verse, he says, on this rock, the faith and who I truly am, I will build my church, my body universal, and the gates of Hades, the place of death, will not overpower. In other words, death loses, life wins. Think about that. Death loses, life wins. See, this conversation, it all is reciprocal. It all keeps turning into each other because it all matters. It's so beautiful. What he's saying is, you might not understand everything I'm telling you right this moment. I think all of us can relate to that. Sometimes we've read, how many of us have ever read a passage in the Bible and read it a year later and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize that's what that meant. You know, or maybe you hear it in a message, you know, because it's being explained maybe a little bit differently. Or we key in on certain little words and say, oh, that changes the entire context of everything. And when we see that, and it's like, so that we say, you might not get everything at this very moment that I'm telling you. But if you will trust me, if you will truly believe in me, if you will follow me, there is so much more to come. Hold on, follow me, watch, listen, learn. In other words, get out of your own way. We wrestle with that because that's generally the way we want to go, right? That's kind of how we determine things. But he's saying, if you just do that, if you just trust me, it's going to end well. I didn't tell you it wouldn't be kind of hairy along the way. I didn't tell you that, but it will end well. It's going to be amazing when it's all said and done. Difficult lessons that are hard to hear. Why? Because it requires something out of me. That's where it gets personal. And when it does that, then we naturally resist that. Because sometimes, well, I want the result, but I don't necessarily want to put in the work to get it. You know? You see the picture of the, you know, if you're into that kind of thing, if you see the picture of the fitness, you know, model or the bodybuilder, so I want that. I want to go to the gym. You know, I don't want to eat, you know, protein shakes and salads. I just want to wake up and get it. Or I just want to take a pill and it just magically appear. That don't work. Except in the movies, you know, but that's not real. And here he's saying, I didn't tell you it was going to be hard. There's going to be some work involved. But when it's over with, it's like really working hard in school. Okay, you're going to graduate school or you're going to whatever. I remember going through the doctorate program and writing, and it seemed like it was never going to end. Okay, but then walking that aisle and getting that deal, man, that was like that's pretty cool. You know, that's pretty awesome. And it's the same thing. I mean, with anything that we do in life, there's some goals and all the stuff that we meet. But Jesus goes on in the conversation and he kind of turns up the heat just a little bit more. So we're already reeling, right? Wait a minute. Our guy is leaving. He's going to suffer. He's going back to where nobody wants him to be, and he's going to be killed. They still haven't grasped the third day part. They ain't got that part yet. Okay, so they're still kind of reeling in this conversation. They're all over the place. And then Jesus said, okay, if anyone wants to follow me. Now, I love the understanding of follow me, okay, because that is a choose, not made to. I'm not going to make you go. You can follow me. Come on, let's go. I don't want to. Okay. I mean, that's the beauty of the love of God, right? He says, so anyone who wants to follow me, that's a desire, let him, wait a minute, Lord, deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Follow and deny? Good grief. I mean, what more can you ask of me, right? That's the human mindset going on here, because that sounds really hard, Lord. I mean, how am I supposed to be able to do that, right? What are you asking of me? I mean, I mean, come on. You mean I have to play a part too? I've got to do some stuff. I've got to help. I've got a role. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're the one that gets the benefit. I'm the one that gets the benefit of everything that he's done. So therefore, I got to run the ball too, right? You know, I run the ball, but the team scores the touchdown. Isn't that how it works? Okay? The team gets the score. And Jesus said, I fought the battle. I fought the battle. Come on, we can do this. We can score this together. In order to follow and pay attention. Think about how those two things go together. Follow the instructions. What do you got to do? You got to pay attention to how they're written, right? Follow and pay attention. What has to be removed? Distractions. Distractions. And what is the most oftentimes the greatest distraction in life? The one looking at you in the mirror. Almost every time. Because we can talk ourselves out of anything. Oh, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or this is too hard, or this costs too much, or this is impossible. And we can talk ourselves right out of it, you know, or I would never be good enough, or nobody would listen to me, or, you know, nobody would read my thing, whatever. We just talk ourselves out of all this other stuff. This is our greatest distraction. Our issues, our concerns, our worries, our doubts. We put all those things together. Think about that now. Listen, our issues, our concerns, our worries, our doubts. We begin to add all of those together. And the only thing that we can see when we begin to do that math is the pity pot and not a way to heaven. Because all that stuff gets in the way, right? I just heard it just this past week talking to somebody. How can this ever get better? Everything is so bad. Everything is so awful. Everything is so upside down. Well, if that's the only way we look at it, that's all you'll ever see. That's all you'll ever see. If all we ever see is bleak and dark and death and it's over and give up and all that, that's all you'll ever find, because that's all that exists. Because see, what we have to understand is the way that it all works is that's how the enemy, he loves that. And he'll come pour more onto that. It's like pouring gas on a fire. It's already there. It's already bad. Okay, let me make it a little bit worse because you'll receive it. Oh, well, it's another bad day. What else could have I expected? How many people live in that mindset? We know them. We know them. Hopefully you don't live with one of them, but we know them. All of us do. And so here the Lord is saying, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And understanding this, it's not that he is telling us that our issues don't matter. He's not saying that. He's not saying that our concerns don't matter. But what he needs us to see is that those things keep us from realizing he's the answer to all of those. He's the answer to all the concerns, all the worries, all the doubts, all the defeats. He's the answer, but they get in the way, and we don't see the answer if we don't follow him. If we're not on the right road to get where we're going, we don't get there, right? Okay? If the only road that can take you to wherever you're going is I-95 and you're on I-74, you're not going to get there. All right? And so what he's trying to get us to see is if you follow me, you'll find the answer. If you don't, it's not going to work. Okay? It's just like my analogy, and I use it over and over, and not to beat a drum, but over and over, but my analogy of going by the gym rather than going in the gym. Okay, where's the differential? You can't solve the problem driving past the help. Think about that for a minute. You cannot solve the problem if you keep driving past the help. People go by this place every single day on this road. Well, I've been thinking about going in. You know, people drive past whatever it is they're looking for. I've been thinking about going in. But you'll never get it fixed if you keep driving. This is what Jesus is saying. I'm offering you everything. I'm offering you all the help that you need. I can answer your concerns, your doubts, your worries, your fears. I can be there for you and all of this stuff. But if you keep driving by, if you keep refusing to follow, if you keep allowing all of the things that you're holding on to keep you from seeing that the answer is right here, that's on you. Because if you won't let it go, if you won't cast your cares upon me, if you won't let it go, we can't get down the same road. But this road must be traveled, because I have to travel down this road so that I can offer you everything that I have promised. Now, whether you receive that or not, that's on you. but it cannot be said that it wasn't offered. Okay? That's true all the time. So we understand following. Following simply means to go after. It means to walk behind. But it requires that we pay attention if we intend to arrive at the desired location. Okay, if you pull up behind somebody, you go in a strange town you've never been before, and you say, can you tell me where, this building is or whatever? And they're like, well, since you don't know the area, just follow me. And I'll take you around there, okay? And so we're behind them, and then we're looking over here, and oh man, look at that place, look at this. And then they get 2 cars ahead of you, or they get 3 red lights ahead of you. And then like, oh, man. So the distraction kept me from following to get to the destination that I was going. We do that to ourselves every day. I now love the Lord. I want to do this. I want to do that. But let me go over here, and let me go over there. And we do it all the time. And it's not that he leaves us. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. But we forget where he's at. We begin to resume holding on to all the things that we've been trying to get rid of. And he's sitting there like a good parent saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? But he loves us enough to let us do it so that we finally realize there's only one answer. There's only one answer. Following means to go after, to walk behind, but it requires that we pay attention. Jesus said, follow me. But we have to ask this question. Where is he going? Where is he going? Back to the Father. And if that is our desire, friends, if we will listen to his instruction, if we will take his lead, we learn as we go that he paid our way. He took care of it. He paid. He took the suffering. He took the death, which was the penalty, and he paid it in full. There's an old gospel song that came out back in the 70s that said, Jesus is your ticket to heaven. He's already paid the price. If you've never heard that, look it up. It's a really cool old song. He's took care of it. And now he says, follow me. Follow me. When we do that, when we follow and we realize what he's done for us, when we begin to really grasp what he's done for us, I believe this with all my heart, it should draw us closer to him. When we begin to understand how much we are loved. We should be blown away by that I'm loved that much. That someone would actually do that for me. That someone would give their life for me. I mean, we get humbled and excited if you're in the drive-through line at Chick-fil-A or whatever, and they pull up to the window and say, oh, that person paid for your lunch. That's a blessing. That feels really good. Jesus gave his life so we could go to heaven. Wow. That ought to get us a little bit more excited than, a number 1 at Chick-fil-A. I mean, that's pretty good. Don't get me wrong. But man, think about what he's saying to us. He continues to speak and he says, whoever wants to save his life will lose it. In other words, those who choose not to follow, but rather go their own way. He's saying to us, you got the freedom to do that. You can do that. But the destination will not be what you hoped for. I can tell you from personal experience traveling down the roads that I wanted to go to for nearly 30 years, they never ended up where I had hoped they would go. Never. Never. It wasn't until I came to know the Lord. And I don't mean instantly. I don't mean like that day, like that moment, like that night. It would take me years to finally realize, what is this saying? How is he leading me to where I need to go? Because I know where I need to go, right? No, he's saying you gotta, if you're going to follow me to get where it is that you need to go, that's what it's going to require, is actually paying attention. And he says here, but whoever loses his life because of me will find it. Follow me, deny self. Now the beauty part of this is understanding this. When he says deny self, he did not say deny life. He did not say that. He did not say never go and enjoy things, but rather don't pursue things that take you off the pathway that leads you to me. Because the distractions, the shiny objects are all over here saying, come over here, come over there, and everything else. But Jesus is saying, follow me. That's one directive, one area, one way. Because, again, we all know this. The shiny objects that come along the way, they cost us precious time that we can never get back. We all And again, it's like the line in the song, regrets I've had a few, but too few to mention. Okay? We've all got those. And we've maybe even all uttered those words, oh, if I could just do that again, I'd do it different. We've all had those moments. We can't live in that because we can't live in the past. Again, referencing an old song, there's an old country song back in the 50s that says, there ain't no future in the past. And that's true. We can't go back, okay? We can't go back. We're all going forward. But if we're following him, we remember we can leave that behind because it's been covered under the blood. It's been taken care of, and God has washed us and made us new. And we can be better. We can move forward as we draw closer to him, and we can show others it is possible to leave that stuff right where it's at. So he's not saying deny life, don't go enjoy yourself, but don't pursue the things that take you off the path that leads us to him. Because again, those shiny objects cost us time. He said, follow me, and I'll give you life. Follow me, and I'll give you life, and it more abundantly. Is that the promise of fame and fortune and all those stuff and big houses? No. But what it is the promise to help us through this life as we prepare for the next chapter. And it is there that we find the abundance. It is there that we find that land with no sickness and no pain and no suffering and no sadness. That is the place where we find love beyond compare. That is the place where we find houses not built by man and love that we've never known. Again, we see the conversation in this concept here in Matthew 16 is personal. God is speaking to all of our hearts. And what we see here is Jesus says, for what will it benefit? What will it gain someone if they get the whole world? What happens with that? Yeah, but what if they have everything? They got it all. They got Elon Musk money, man. They got it all. They got everything. What if they've got all of that, but yet still they lose their very soul? They lose their life. What is he saying here? He's not saying that it's wrong to have things. That is absolutely not what he's saying at all. But what he is saying is this: if that's all you've got, then you end up with nothing. If all my stuff is what I leave with, I don't leave with anything. Think about the power of those words. He didn't say it's wrong to have things. There's nothing wrong with homes and cars and all that stuff. There's nothing even wrong with being known and notable and celebrity. It's not necessarily a wrong thing. But what he's saying is if you bank everything on that, you will leave with that. And that's all you've got. The Pharisees and the scribes and the different ones that were lauding themselves before the public and praying out loud and wearing their jeweled outfits and their big hats and all this stuff and drawing all the attention to themselves. Jesus said of them, do not be jealous, for their reward is now, a reference to there's not one coming. That's powerful. And so he's saying here, he's saying if you gain the whole world, man, look, I got everything, but I have nothing. I've got a friend that's coming in May, and he's going to be sharing a Saturday with us for a big men's conference. We're going to fill this room talking about being men of God, and then he's going to be with us on that Sunday morning to share the word. And he was a very big celebrity at one time in his world, and he will share that, that he had it all. He had all the money that you could have. He had the big houses, the big cars, all the pretty girls chasing him, everything. But he knew that at the end of it, there was nothing. It was empty. And again, it's not a declaration of it's wrong to have stuff. But as Jesus is saying here, if that's all you have and you don't have me, you have nothing. Because that will leave you. How many people over the years in the different stock market crashes, it happened all in one day and it was over. And they're diving out the buildings, taking their lives and all this stuff. He said, you left this world with nothing because you lost your life. You lost your very soul. But he goes on, he says, what will the one give in exchange for their life, for their very soul? Speaking of eternity. Now that question seems a little strange to a degree because we ask ourselves, would someone truly do that? Would someone truly trade or sell or get rid of their very soul for something else? Yeah. Because while it's hard to imagine, friends, we've got to understand this. The power of distraction is powerful. The enemy himself, as he said to Jesus, not just anybody, the enemy stood on the mountaintop looking eyeball to eyeball with Jesus. And he said, look out. Look out. You can have everything that you see. You can have it all. You can have everything that you see. You can have it. You can have it all. Does that sound like a promise today? You can have everything. You can do this. You can do that. It's a promise. But then we realize there's that little string attached. There's the fine print in the contract, right? And so the enemy is saying to Jesus, look out. You can have everything that you see. You can have it all. And then he mildly whispered the catch, the string, if you will. Just bow down to me. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. It's the same playbook in the garden. Just one bite, Eve. Come on, just one bite. That's all. Just one bite. That's not a big deal. How many of us have learned the hard way in life that one time's all it took? It's kind of true, right? One time's all it takes. And so that's the catch. It is the inability or the unwillingness to hear the whisper that many lose their very life every day. Oh, I can have everything? I can just sign and drive? Yeah. And then 30 days later, you get the coupon book, at $600 a month. Oh, I didn't realize it came with that. Yeah. There's always a catch. And again, that's not to be conspiratorial or negative, but that's just true. There are very few things in this life other than a headache or hard times that are free. Everything else has got a catch, right? And so we see all those gimmicks on if you're on online at all. 7 days free, this day free, But then if you don't cancel it, it's $50 a month. There's always a catch. Well, here's the enemy saying, you can have everything as long as you bow down to me. But he didn't say that part loud. He don't want you to hear that part. Oh man, I didn't hear. That's what he's counting on, is we don't hear that. And so Jesus is saying here, follow me. Follow me. Deny self, which again are those things that are screaming your name. Hey, come over here. Come, let's do this. Those things that are demanding your soul. Oh, you don't need that stuff. Don't worry about that. Jesus said, take up your cross. What is that? Our burdens. The things that are difficult for us to handle. The things that we can't seem to shake. He says, take it up and follow me. So there again, we have to ask the question, where's he going? Where am I going if I'm following him? I'm going to the answer. I'm going to the place of rest that I've been promised. I'm going to the place that I can lay those burdens down and never have to carry them again. That's where I'm going. And that's what he's saying to us. Follow me. Take up your cross. Deny yourself and follow me. We get to follow him home. We get to go home. That's not a morbid thing. That's not a negative thing. That's a beautiful thing. Incredible thing. And this is the promise. And this is the road that must be traveled. This is where he's saying, we got to go. We got to go. I have to go, and I've got to suffer, and I got to die, but I'm going to rise again on the third day. And through that, and because of that, I can offer you everything that God has commanded me and given me to give to you. And you can have it if you follow me. So how do we find the cross? And this is a series is why the cross? How do we find the cross? It runs right through the middle of the pathway that we follow when we follow him. It's right there. You can't get around it. You can't deny it. It's just like that picture. It is the road that runs right through the middle of that. When we see that it was there, it was on that cross, that the price was paid in full. It was all taken care of. This allows our journey to continue today, and it gives us the promise that it will end well. It is the road that must be traveled if indeed we desire to save our very soul. You see, friends, this beautiful promise that we've been given is that we don't have to travel this road alone. That road seems scary, but he's with us there all the time. How do we know that? Because he said, follow me. I'm right there with you. He's always right there in front of us, and he's saying, come on, we're almost there. We're almost there. The beauty of this message, friends, it changes lives when it's received, when it's accepted, and when it's lived out. Is it always easy? No. And that would be a lie to tell you that. Is it always easy? No. But never forget, he walks with us every step of the way. Every step of the way, if we'll allow him to. If we will allow him to. It was necessary that he must go. It had to happen. But I want you to grab this as we close this up. It was necessary that he must go, that he must suffer, that he must die, that he must rise on the third day. Because that is how valuable our soul is to him. Hold on to that today. As you cross this week, as you enter into these days, remember, I matter. I count. Jesus paid it all for me. Jesus took care of all of this for me. And as we march toward Calvary, as we march toward resurrection morning, may we fully grasp the power of this moment and truly allow it to shape the days ahead. Amen? Let's pray.